let's do something that has never been done before, allow us to go inside. We will hit the terror camps. I did not expect it. At best I expected he would say, I'll go back, discuss with the Prime Minister, you'll get your orders. But he said, okay. I had an okay to do something that had never been done before while my army chief was sitting there. When you are defending the borders of your country, you don't mind fighting to death. But when you're fighting terrorists, I would rather save our lives, our soldiers' lives. Because the terrorist has a shelf life. He आज नहीं तो कल मरेगा, यहाँ नहीं तो वहाँ मरेगा. As we started walking, we were descending down the slope, and the JCO on the post, Subhda Balraj, called out to me and said, "Saab, वो लोग बोल रहे हैं." Now the Pakistani post is called out and said, आपके लोग आगे जा रहे हैं, हमारे को कंपनी कमांडर से ऑर्डर आया उनको फायर करने के लिए. So tell them not to move. तो I told them, उनको बताओ ये हमारे नहीं है, गाँव वाले हैं. तो इसे मैंने बता दिया और उन्होंने कहा कि नहीं हमें पता है ये आपका सीओ साहब जा रहा है. Look at how porous the LC is. At a certain place, there was a wide nala, a dry nala. So I could not have jumped because I was carrying this load. I stretched my leg out and I put my leg on the other side. I got unbalanced for a moment. I was trying to regain my balance. And suddenly I heard Himanshu, Major Sawant, from behind me said, hey. He said, hey. And I turned back. The moment I turned back, I was trying to regain my balance. I turned back and he started firing at me. I was so shocked. He is firing at me from just about less than 10 yards. I was transfixed, but actually what had happened is this, unknown to me. I'm now narrating it to you. There was a terrorist who had run down, perhaps, and he was hiding in that nala.
All wars are fought twice. The first time on the battlefield, the second time in memory. And so stories are important. Stories are how we make sense of our memories and our histories, how we pass on our memories and our histories, and which is the reason behind the Times of India podcast special series, Line of Duty. And while recording war history is one of the objectives of this podcast series, it is also an effort to set the record straight and tell the world about India, her defense capabilities, and how India is shaping up for future warfare. And with that, I'm honored to welcome our very first guest on this special series, Lieutenant General Satish Dua. Hello, sir. Welcome joining us. He's been at the heart of India's most complex conflict theaters, Kashmir and counter-terrorism ops. And of course, the man who planned and executed the surgical strikes after the Uri attack, which killed 18 Indian soldiers. That was 2016. Sir, there's a whole lot we need to discuss, but let me start with the very obvious, Operation Sindoor. The success of Operation Sindoor has often been called a defining moment in India's military history in terms of giving back as good as you get. What's your sense?
Aditi, first of all, thank you very much for having me on your show. Good morning to you and Jai Hind to all the viewers. Operation Sindoor is really a big success, and I could talk a lot about it, but I'll just try to put it in two lines. 1971 war is hailed as a great military victory around the world in military history because in 14 days we managed to not only get the Pakistan army to on the surrender table, but they laid down 93,000 soldiers laid down their weapons in a formal surrender ceremony. That's something that's not happened after world wars. That was 14 days. In Operation Sindoor, it took us only 4 days, less than 4 days, 88 hours to be precise, for India to have Pakistan coming and asking us for a ceasefire. And that's where we were. So everyone discusses the fact that nowhere in the world there has been a parallel of one conflict in modern times ending so soon and so effectively. So, having said that, now Pakistan actually asked us for a ceasefire. Now, that is when a country asks for a ceasefire, that means they were, they were obviously fearing the retaliation of the further strikes, and so that's where it rested. Now India was doing well militarily, all our strikes were going very well, but like coming back to your question, we decided that we will stop this for two reasons. One, you know, our aim was only to strike at the terror targets. Rest, we were drawn into what Pakistan did. Then we were reacting to them. And that was our stated aim, the first terror targets. So our aims, our mission in Operation Sindoor had actually been met 3 days before that. And secondly, conflict termination is a very complex business. To have conflict termination on one's own terms, and when we are in the control of the escalation matrix, is very important. And that's what we did. It was on our own terms. They asked us for a ceasefire, and we were ahead, and we decided to terminate the conflict that time. You see, look at what is otherwise. I mean, look at what's happening in Russia, Ukraine, Israel, Gaza. They're dragging on for years now.
But sir, why did Pakistan want us to stop? What is it at the Noor Khan base कि वहाँ पे our bombs hit and the calls went through from Pakistani DGMO to Indian DGMO?
Firstly, to my mind, it was not only Noor Khan base per se. That was the last straw. Before I come to the importance of Noor Khan base. So that was the last straw. When they realized that our strikes are so effective. When you hit at Murid K, you are so close to the Corps headquarters. When you hit at Noor Khan base, you are so close to the center of gravity of Pakistan. That the signal goes that if you can hit at Noor Khan base with such precision that there is no collateral damage, no neighborhood localities or persons are getting targeted. So it's only 26 kilometers further and you will hit their headquarters. So that is what shook them up. And I think that was a very good statement that went out from our side, that we have hit Noor Khan base. We don't want to escalate it any further.
Okay. And theater command, that is something that is often now being talked about more and more in the military circles, especially after Operation Sindoor. Suddenly there's it was there also, the preparation for theater command was there also earlier. But for our viewers, can you explain what theater command is? Why is it so important and how it was used in, let's say, Operation Sindoor?
Right. So first, let me give you a very broad explainer as to what theater command is for the viewers. Instead of Army, Navy and Air Force fighting separately, we need integration, as 66 other countries have gotten on to integration of between the forces ever since World War II terminated. Increasingly, what happens is that the decision times are being shortened. Today, the number of sensors and the shooters and the platforms, the missiles, the aircraft, the drones, and the number of other electronic warfare components and cyber, etc., are increasing. So there is no time for passing upward, upward delegation as it's called in corporate sector, for passing upwards and seeking decisions. There is no time. Everything, there is a simultaneity in everything, and that is why it is not possible for every decision. The army soldier, the decision will come from army headquarters. For Air Force, it will come from air headquarters, and so on for the naval headquarters. And that is why in a theater, if let's say in India, it will be logical to have one theater looking after one adversary, that is Pakistan, one theater looking after another adversary, the northern adversary, the China, and one theater for the peninsular India. So in a theater, all the instruments of power, Army, Navy, Air Force, cyber, space, diplomacy, everything will be put together under one theater commander. Now that makes the decision loop shorter. He has resources at his disposal. He has the intelligence generated and everything. So on one hand, he has all the resources to prosecute operations. On the other hand, he has accountability. He is accountable to the national leadership for that theater. Now come back to Operation Sindoor. Now, you see, during Operation Sindoor, all three services, Army, Navy, Air Force, did fight very well in an integrated manner. But remember, it was a 4-day operation. God forbid if an operation drew out for months and months. We had the national leadership participating. We saw the visuals. Where not only the NSA, the Prime Minister chaired many meetings. All the chiefs are sitting. Suppose it drew on for months, God forbid. Could the leadership maintain that gusto and meeting every day? I mean, there are other things to attend to. I'll make it worse. Let's say another front had opened up from our northern neighbor, because that's something we always talk about, a 2-front war and a 2.5-front war. So if that had happened, now will you be focused this side or will you be focused that side? That is the time we really require theaters, so that a theater commander is responsible
For the Western Front and
one for the northern front, and if there are some maritime threats, then for the peninsular India, there'll be a separate theater. So that is the essence of why theater commands are required. And we should not draw wrong lessons from Operation Sindoor. While the operation was a success, but we should not draw wrong lessons, because what happens is that in a protracted or a multi-front operation, theater commanders will be then responsible and also accountable.
And what about cyber warfare? For instance, when I say cyber warfare, I'm really talking about the information war. We saw during Operation Sindoor the kind of information war that was unleashed from across the border. There were Pakistani handles misleading, lying, doing everything possible to sort of twist the narrative, and not just in one language. They were doing it in multiple languages. At one point, somebody told me there were 18 languages that they were functioning in, trying to influence world opinion in their favor. Does India have an alternate for that? Are we developing an alternative for that?
Firstly, I must tell you that, when we were young officers for our professional military education and some examinations, one of the books that was prescribed to us was a book called Defeat into Victory by Field Marshal Slim. That is the whole Burmese operation in World War II, how, General Slim rolled back. The Japanese had occupied whole of Burma and some parts of northeastern parts of India. And then how the 14th Army actually rolled back the Japanese. The book is called Defeat into Victory. Now, I don't know whether it's still being taught in our professional military education, but I think Pakistan really follows that defeat into victory model very well. They paint every defeat of theirs into a victory. Can you imagine 1971 operation where the country was split into two, another new country was formed,
That also
is a victory. So today, present generation believes in Pakistan that is a victory. But having said that, a little that aside apart, I must give credit to Pakistan. I know it may sound terribly unpatriotic, but the fact is Pakistan plays the game of narrative much better than us. We need to learn. Yes, you're right. Not only the number of languages, the way they played that, even Operation Sindoor, they managed to convince the West as if it's their victory. So if they could do it for 1971, where country was divided into two, now they will surely, they surely can do it for Operation Sindoor as well. So I think we need to take stock. Our narrative building has to be more credible. We have to see, they base it on lies. For us, it's easier. Yes, we can base it on a credible truth. And that's what we don't do. Let me give you an example from our recent history. 26/11, the carnage in Mumbai. And we lost so many. But we, in a high-profile terror attack, nowhere in the world has a suicide terrorist been captured alive. We captured Ajmal Kasab.
Alive, yeah.
But we did not build a narrative around it. We should have been talking about it. Our Indian Army gives a chance to terrorists. When we went into an encounter, we give them a chance to surrender. We announce, I've been in operations myself, and you must have seen some visuals appearing here and there. We actually give them a chance to surrender. We do not use heavy weaponry at the terrorists. We don't use medium machine guns or artillery and drones, airstrikes or things like that. But we don't make a narrative around it. So my point is, we need to do that. Then there are other ways of building narrative. Not only this, different, for example, Pakistan has lobbying firms. They've engaged lobbying firms in Washington. They do that because, you have to, today's narrative building or this information warfare, as you call it, has graduated to becoming a cognitive warfare. And in that cognitive domain, you see, the old days propaganda, if that was like shouting on a megaphone, today's cognitive warfare is like a personalized brain implant. You start altering the thinking process of an individual or a group of individuals. So that is what Pakistan is doing. We need to get in professionals to make our narrative better.
From what I understand, I think, and from my talks with several people within the forces right now, who are part of Operation Sindoor at the planning level, I think that we've already taken cognizance of this and we've already started working in that direction. But having said that, Operation Sindoor brings me to the Uri attack and the surgical strikes thereafter, sir. You were the Corps Commander for those strikes. Would you say that it changed the way India has been dealing with Pakistan-sponsored terror from across the border? Do you think it was the first stage, so to speak, for an Operation Sindoor-like blowback for Pakistan?
Yes, I think it was. And why I say that is because even Kargil conflict, we fought with our one hand tied behind our back. We had a self-imposed restriction of not crossing the LOC. We did not allow, not only our soldiers did not cross the LOC, because sometimes it makes tactical sense to go and surround the enemy or attack him from the rear. But also our Air Force was not allowed to cross the LOC. Now, why did we do that? We did that because of the nuclear overhang, the nuclear card that Pakistan has been holding over us for long, the nuclear bluff. And so, of course, the world also heaved a sigh of relief when Kargil conflict ended and it did not escalate. So, when we come to 2016, when the Uri attack happened, I was a Corps Commander with the terror attack where we lost 18 soldiers. But it was just not that one operation. It was the last straw. There were many operations before that where suicide terrorists would enter, take hostages. There was 66 hostages were taken in an EDI building in Pampore just a few months before that. A few months before that, the Pathankot air base, the suicide terror attack had been attacked. So all that was happening. And that day, I think, we decided to go proactive. India decided to go proactive. And, or I should say, we decided to call their nuclear bluff. And we did that very successfully because the surgical strikes, while they were only 3-4 kilometers deep, but the fact is we attacked the terrorist camps close to the LOC. We inflicted casualties only on the terrorists, did not engage with the Pakistan army and came back. So, the Pakistan Army's nuclear bluff was called. We found that little space below the nuclear threshold to respond to high-profile terror attacks.
What exactly happened? How did it go down? Who told you ki go do this? Or did you come up with it and then went for approval? What exactly played out?
So it was on 18th of September 2016 that our camp at Uri, which is bang on the LOC, very close to the LOC, was attacked by 4 suicide terrorists. We lost 18 soldiers. It's a very dark day of my life. I lost 18 soldiers on my watch. And I went to Uri and took stock of the situation. And somewhere at noon or mid-morning, I got a call from the Defense Secretary that Defense Minister is landing there. Late Mr. Noor Parrikar was the Defense Minister. I actually asked Mr. Mohan, the Defense Secretary, why now? Why today? I mean, I didn't want VIPs on my hands. Actually, my first response was this. But then he said he's already taken off. So Defense Minister, Mr. Parrikar, landed there. The Army Chief had already arrived. We received him at the airport. He wanted to go to Uri. Then I said, so you can't. The operations are still going on because we had just returned from Uri. So we can't. And we brought him to our headquarters. I said, I can take you to my headquarters for briefing you on the situation. And that's what we did. I was briefing him while the army commander and the army chief were sitting because it's my domain. Whole Kashmir was my domain. So I just want to clarify that for the viewers. And then he asked me, to ab kya karna hai? At the end of it. So I said, "Sir, if you mean what should our response be, then I'd like to speak to you, brief you separately in my office. Not in the operation room. There are many officers there. There were only 4 of us in the office: the army chief, army commander, myself, and the defense. We were briefing the defense minister. So the army chief spoke at the national level, our criticalities, our preparedness levels, and things like that. So when it came to me, when he asked me, I was thinking how we can sort of put this to good use. I mean, I'm putting it very crudely. Put this to good use that the army, that the defense minister has landed up that very day. Normally, politicians come a little later, leaders come a little later, but he was there. And then I told him, sir, every time we are only defensive. We increase our defensive measures. We put some more wires. We put some more sensors. We put some more weapons. But they come in, they attack, they send in terrorists who attack our siblings, attack our soldiers, sometimes mutilate their bodies and go back. We continue to remain defensive. Let's do something that has never been done before. Allow us to go inside. We will hit the terror camps. I must give full credit to Mr. Parrikar because he asked me a few questions. I cannot obviously discuss details. Then he discussed a few things with us and he said, okay. I was surprised. I did not expect it. At best, I expected he would say, I'll go back, discuss with the Prime Minister, you'll get your orders. But he said, okay. I had an okay to do something that had never been done before while my army chief was sitting there. I didn't have to then run it past anyone. Army chief and army commander were there. And so then we put this plan into action. So
Were you scared at any point? You said you were surprised.
Yes.
But was there some apprehension once the yes came?
No, there was a complication after that. He said yes, but then he laid... he asked several questions. I can't discuss many things, but 2 of his questions or conditions, let me tell you. He said, first thing he said, there should be no collateral damage. Look at this man. We are at war. I mean, that situation. And he's still, there should not be any collateral damage.
Ties back to the responsibility.
Yeah. We did not have collateral damage. Even in Operation Sindoor, there was no collateral damage anywhere. Only the precise targeting. Okay, so he said there should be no collateral damage. I said, that is very easy because we will be going through areas which are not inhabited. We will route ourselves in such a way. So that's not a problem. The second thing he said, there should be no casualties to own soldiers. Now, I said very promptly, I said, sir, I agree with you. There should be no casualties to own soldiers. You know, I can't change any of what I'm saying because I have written all this story in my book, India's Brave Hearts. I said, sir, I agree with you. There should be no casualties to our own troops. But this is war. Kuch bhi ho sakta hai. And in fact, I told him, sir, there will be casualties. If you do an operation of this magnitude, go that deep at multiple locations, we have to be prepared to accept a few casualties. He even asked how many. So we have some broad parameters of trying to say this much to this much, numbers. And we did discuss that. Then he kept quiet. Believe me, Aditi, now I can say it in hindsight. I was kicking myself. Here I had a permission to do what I could have done, what has never been done before. And now I thought the politician in him won't allow. Because there will be casualties, then the political dynamics will take over and all that will happen. So, but he thought for a moment, and that moment weighed very heavily on me. After a few seconds, he just said one word, which I write in the book. He said, Barobar. Oh. And we all know Barobar can mean many things. Here it meant, come, let's do it. And I think what you interrupted me to say, I think fortune favors the brave. Though we did tell him there will be casualties, and multiple locations were raided, struck across the line of control. 10 days later, we launched what is called surgical strikes, and we did not have, because fortune favors the brave, I think we did not have a single casualty.
Okay, fortune favors the brave is one reason for no casualties, but I'm sure there's a lot of planning and detailing that went into it. Can you to whatever much you can share, can you share with us what kind of, when you were planning it, what went into this? Because the secrecy would have been very difficult to maintain of such a huge operation.
True. First, let me tell you that when we say planning and preparation, we in the army are continuously uh, preparing for it, planning for it, and preparing for it. What do I mean by that? We are prepared for such contingencies. Troops are earmarked. We know which battalion, which special forces team will go to which area. They are always ready with updating their intelligence picture. They know what is there, where are the targets, where are the terrorist camps, what are the routes to be followed, what are the likely obstacles, and everything else is, or what are the enemy interference likely in between. Everything is known. And that is why, with great confidence, I could tell him then. I did not go and discuss with my advisors or something. It's years of experience of having been in combat oneself to be able to take a decision like that and suggest something. So, so our planning, as you asked, preparations have been ongoing. You can't, from the word get go, you can't launch an operation in 10 days, because 10 days later we launched an operation like this. So we did. So that continuous process helped. We knew the troops are earmarked, and that is why. And very frankly, one of the things that we asked him, I said, so you'll have to leave the decision of targets and the timings to us, and that's how we could later on make up our mind how many days we need, how much days we had a free hand in that.
And if I may ask, how many commandos went in? How was that? Because you were here, you sent in those commandos inside Pakistan. That was the first time they were going inside enemy territory, so to speak, the Indian Jawans, Indian commandos. How was that moment? And how was it on this side of the border when our people were on the other side?
So I will obviously ignore your first part of the question when you said ki how many commandos. So you may ask, but I will not answer that. I'm sure you understand that. But yes, to the larger question. When our boys were across, now in our operation room, we were getting a fairly real-time picture. Though my orders were very clear that no one will keep ringing up, or not ringing up, on the radio said, no one will keep talking, asking progress kahan hai, kahan pahunche, and those sort of things, what is happening now. Leave them free to do their task. I mean, I have been in the field and combat myself. There's nothing more hateful than, someone trying to just get the picture and so that he can tell his boss. So that's not required. But while we were sitting in the option the whole night, we were, there is always a dread, because in this counter-terrorism situation, we don't want to lose our soldiers. You see, if you are defending the borders of your country, you see this new movie 120 Bahadur, how 114 of them fought till the last soldier, last bullet. They fought and they perished. What happened in Saragadi? All 22 of them perished. When you are defending the borders of your country, you don't mind fighting to death. But when you're fighting terrorists, I would rather save our lives, our soldiers' lives, because the terrorist has a shelf life. He आज नहीं तो कल मरेगा, यहाँ नहीं तो वहाँ मरेगा. So there is always a moment you think that we should not have casualties. That is uppermost in the minds of any commander. And I still recall then if a phone would ring somewhere in my operation room and somebody would answer it, I would be dreading. I hope he's not going to give me bad news. Things like that. So surprisingly, I found myself praying for my soldiers' safety more than for the success of the operation also. So that was the kind of feeling that we had while this commandos were out.
All right. You served 40 years, and surgical strikes were, of course, a major achievement, showed the way forward. I think the single most achievement of the surgical strike was that it was the first time we went across the border. And then, of course, now every time Pakistan does something, we don't hesitate in going across the border and giving it back to them. Uh, you've served in very hot areas. I just wanted to think back and, along the LOC, there are terrorists, there's infiltration, there is, attempts, there's fighting all the time. Apart from combat and chasing the bad guys, tell us the experience of life along the LOC as an Indian soldier.
Let me just describe the LOC for the viewer first. What is LOC? It's an unresolved border, so we have to man it. We have to make sure that no one creeps in. So it is manned on both sides. When we say man, what does it mean? So we hold posts. It's an imaginary line on ground. There is no fence which is drawn, but it is defined on maps. And what is a post? So on top of a mountain peak, and there is another mountain peak here. So we hold this place with a post, and this mountain peak also with a post, which can dominate the area, look down and see if any enemy encroachment is taking place, we can fire on them. So that's the way it is. Now, what's a post? It's a group of bunkers. Now, what's a bunker? Bunker is, say, a 8x8 or a 8x10 room, which is dug down inside the ground. Only the top ventilator will be like a loophole. So that will be out. Yes. So usme, you can use a weapon to look at it. Why it is dug down is so that when there is artillery shelling or air strikes, it is protected because it is dug down. So that's our life on the line of control. Any soldier's life. So you remain very isolated. These are all high altitude. Most of them are high altitude areas. They're covered with snow for 6 to 8 months, depending on the altitude. The weather is very harsh. There are avalanches, there are glaciers, there are mountains and streams, and it's thickly forested. So there is wildlife, but some places there is lack of water. So you have to walk down to get water. So day-to-day living and weathering the climatic condition by itself is a challenge.
And then your family is there.
Oh, of course. The families are nowhere near. These are non-family stations. Yeah. For miles there are no villages. There are few villages at times on the line of some parts of the line of control. Having said that, but this is not the end of it. This I'm just explaining the dynamics when it is peacetime. Now starts the issue of the last 35, 40 years when terrorists have started infiltrating. So we not only man those posts, then we do patrolling, then we lay ambushes on the intervening nalas, rivers, mountain streams, jungles, rocky areas. So then, because terrorists will get through, try and get through those folds in the ground. They will try and get through when it is raining. They will try and get through when there is a snowstorm, because then that is favoring an infiltration. So during that time, we have to be out. So it's a very tough call. And plus, the Pakistani posts start firing. When you know that when they start firing, they are trying to, mostly it happens when they're trying to aid some infiltration attempts. So sometimes it is firing in, aimless firing also. And when it's aimless firing, then stray bullets can hit you, artillery shelling, mortar firing. So, all this make the life very uncertain. And at times, you have casualties when you just can't even imagine, or you don't even think that you're in an operation.
How many, we hear of the news as and when it breaks that the terrorists were trying to cross, then they were shot down or whatever. But as a person stationed there, how many terrorists, for instance, would try and cross over in a month? And what are the best seasons? What are the peak seasons when infiltration is more, and when is it less? And I'm not talking now. I'm talking about your tenure at that time.
So, when you say how many terrorists would cross in a month, it will vary. And I'm also talking of the, 90s, when it was a lot of, that is the time I was, my company commander or commanding officer days. I started commanding my battalion in 1998 on the LOC. So those are the times. And that was the militancy, the terrorism was at its peak in J&K those days. But as to how many terrorists approximately will cross will depend on terrain, because there are certain areas which lend themselves, the terrain and the population, spread of population lends itself to more infiltration than other areas. And let me explain that. What happens is that some places, if it is a very barren hillside, mountainside, you can see for miles, that is not a good place or terrain does not favor the infiltrator. Even when there is a stream, there is overgrown jungle, thick undergrowth, there is a mountain stream, there are so many folds in the ground that you cannot see. Sometimes you don't know, under a 50 feet overhang, there is a river passing by or a mountain stream, and you will not be able to look down. So such areas are more prone to infiltration. Also, when I said population, now if there is a village, if there is no population in the vicinity of LOC, and some places it is like that, infiltration will be lesser. But if there is a village just behind the LOC, because certain fertile places, because there are fields and people do till the fields right up to the LOC, those places will be a little more prone to infiltration because they can merge with them. They can find sympathizers, they can find overground workers, and they can merge with the population. They can seek shelter in the crop. The maki is about 6.5 feet tall. They can walk through it in the season. So I'm saying there are different factors that affect this. So in my time when I was on the LOC in Punch area, my battalion was it was prone to such infiltration, very likely route of infiltration, and we used to have at least 2 or 3 encounters with terrorists every month. And in every encounter, there would be as much as 4, 6, 7 terrorists being killed. There were times earlier when it happened in Kashmir, there were much bigger groups also that have been involved in combat with our soldiers. So while the figures may vary and the areas will vary, and so it is not possible to put a pin to it.
And what about the soldiers on the other side? There are certain points in the LOC when the soldiers on the other side, you can see them.
Yes.
Have you had any experiences you can share with us where there's been hostility when you can see the enemy right in front of you, or they can see you, and it's a hostile environment?
Yes. That's a good question, Aditi, because when you are in eyeball to eyeball configuration, you can see them, you can shout across. Some places it's very close. It's 50, 60 meters. You can shout across. And in my book, another third book, a book of mine called Bravest of the Brave, I bring out 2 or 3 such incidents. Let me first give you an incident of good times. LOC in good times. 1983, I was a captain. We were in Kupwara, North Kashmir, on the LOC. And those days there was no terrorism. There was some undercurrents in the valley, but there was no active terrorism as such. Or terrorists infiltrating from across the LOC. And that time, a post shouted across that the JCO was there on the post, the Pakistani post, and he shouted across and asked us. No, we said Eid Mubarak because there was Eid. That he said, some आपको सेवियां ईद पे हमने ईद मुबारक चिल्ला के बोला. तो उन्होंने कहा आपको अगर हम सेवियां दें तो आप सेवियां खाएंगे. So, and he said, आपके सामने मैं एक चम्मच खा लूंगा उसमें से. He's trying to reassure us that they're not laced with poison. Yes. And we said, no, आप दीजिए हम खाएंगे. मतलब, and you don't have to do this for us. तो हमने किया उनसे ईद मुबारक और ईद की सेवइयां खाई. They used to ask us for sugar. उन दिनों में, those days, they used to get good in their tea rations, not sugar. And they sometimes used to ask for rum. So, those were the days. Now let's talk about some hostile encounters on the LOC conversations. There's a very interesting incident that I've written in my book, first book, India's Brave Hearts, where this was when Operation Vijay was on, Kargil conflict was on. I was on a different part of the LOC, not in the Kargil. Not in Kargil. I've served in Kargil earlier. I'm the commanding officer. And when Kargil conflict was going on, the whole LOC was activated. There was a lot of firing, artillery shelling, mortars, infantry mortars shelling, all that used to go on. On the forward slopes, that means the slope that is facing the enemy, if the line of control is along a nala or a mountain stream or river down below, on the forward slopes, in certain areas where there was inhabitation, we used to walk around in the civil, in a Pathan suit, salwar kameez, because the locals, to merge with the local civilians. And our boys, we carry a rifle, a AK rifle, they would put a shawl over there to hide that. And that was a norm, because the enemy can see you. So I went to a post with my QRT, with five very capable soldiers, the quick reaction team of the commanding officer. And we went to a post. And from there, I met the boys. You keep going to post, meeting the boys, ask for any problems, it raises their morale, and any other issues. And then you walk across and see the defensive preparedness, etc. As I started to move to the next post, here was a post, enemy post, was just 50 to 60 meters away. And these are tense times. People used to shout across, and they used to sometimes hurl abuses. Acha, tum aa jao, tum tayari karke aana, Kargil war is going on. So imagine those days, maa ka doodh piya hai, to aa jao. All that kind of, they start talking like that. As we started walking, we were descending down the slope, and the JCO on the post, Subhadra Balraj, called out to me and said, Saab, ruk jao. And wo log bol rahe hain. Now the Pakistani post is called out and said, आपके लोग आगे जा रहे हैं, हमारे को कंपनी कमांडर से ऑर्डर आया उनको फायर करने के लिए. So tell them not to move. तो I told them, उनको बताओ ये हमारे नहीं है, गांव वाले हैं. तो इसे मैंने बता दिया, और उन्होंने कहा है कि नहीं, हमें पता है ये आपका सीओ साहब जा रहा है. Look at how porous the LC is. That village, and I write about the story in this book, that village is the LOC actually runs through the village. People have relatives across. They used to earlier have weddings across. Okay. Now it's a very poor. They said, आपका सीओ साहब जा रहा है, हमें मालूम है, अब हमें फायर करना पड़ेगा. I was at a loss as to what to do. My dilemma was, if I move, I am risking the lives of all 6 of us, my five of my jawans and myself. If I don't, and I sit down there, we take shelter, we do what they said, and we could have as well waited another 2-3 hours, it would have been dark, and then we could have moved on. But the talk in my village, in my battalion, will be, CO Saab to dar gaya. No, you see, somebody might say, it is only prudent, why should you move? But Aditi, we in the army, for us, sentiment is everything. That soldier, his bravery, he risks his life when I order him to do so, only because he feels that we are brave. If he starts feeling that the commanding officer is not brave, he will, I have other incidents to talk about as to what I had to do to, motivate them. But I thought to myself, now if I sit down, that's the intangible I will be losing. And that is something I will never be able to wash away.
The respect of your troops.
They will say, not realizing, no, I'm doing the right thing, that we should not. So I thought for a moment, I gave it, all this went through my mind. Then I told him, you tell them, you shout across and tell them, हाँ ये हमारा सीओ जा रहा है. और अगर तुमने फायर किया, तुम्हारी पहली गोली तो सीओ को लगेगी नहीं, लेकिन तुम्हारी पहली गोली फायर होते ही हम तुम्हारी पूरी पोस्ट तोड़ देंगे. We have got very heavy weaponry there. We were dominating that post slightly. When you, in our parlance, military parlance, if your post, is a little higher and their post is a little lower, then you can fire heavy weaponry into them more effectively. And with rocket launchers, other heavy weapons, let me not give out details, you can actually break the post, cause heavy casualties of them.
Then what happened?
Then he said, I said, उनको बोलो, अपने company commander को बोलो, ये बोल रहे हैं. So that the company commander is somewhere behind. He's to pass orders on telephone. And I waited for 5 minutes. Obviously, there's not going to be a reply. I waited for 5 minutes. And then I asked my soldiers, well, by now I know they would have conveyed the decision, whatever is their decision. And I said, हाँ भाई डरें या चलें, तो दे आर फुल ऑफ जोश, चलें साहब चलें, हाँ साहब चलते हैं. So they are very happy that, they're gung-ho. That spirits were very high. We're in a high adrenaline zone that time. The Kargil war was going on. It was another 20 to 25 minutes of walk when we were in the open. Then we had to reach a forested patch. Usme bhi aage hamari ek post thi, but there we would have been undercover. Aditi, it was that 25. It was the longest 25 minutes of my life, or 20 minutes.
You didn't know where a bullet was.
Every moment I would think, now this bullet will hit me. And then I started thinking what I had not thought through earlier. Then during that 20 minutes, I thought, if a bullet hits a Jawan, if I lose a Jawan, how will I go back alive? And everybody will say, you are a fool. You were a colonel. Kya hero banne chala tha? You've lost the life of a Jawan. And things like that. And I knew that this can happen. It weighed down so heavily on my conscience. I thought I felt my blood pressure drop. Because this is something I did not think of earlier. This happened to me during the walk.
As they say, there's a very thin line between recklessness and bravery.
Absolutely. There is a very thin line between bravery and foolishness.
All right. That's what is interesting. We're laughing now, but I'm sure those 25 minutes must have been torturous for you. From that time in the 80s or 90s that you're talking about to today, there is white-collar terror. There is a Red Fort attack carried out by radicalized doctors in the national capital. How has been the evolution of terrorism in Kashmir?
Again, that's a very good question, because terrorism in the last almost 4 decades has really evolved. And it's not when I say terrorism has evolved, it is not only in Kashmir we are talking about, Jammu and Kashmir. Yeah. So I'm saying terrorism has evolved. And that has affected the journey of terrorism in Jammu and Kashmir as well. When they started off in late 80s, 90s, they used to cover their faces. They used to, the villagers used to make sure that the children, if security forces, when we were captains and majors, when we entered the villages for a cordon and search operation, they would pull their children indoor, close the doors. They didn't want to entangle with, or they didn't want to come in contact with security forces, whether it's army or police. Then slowly, as our grid became robust, they started changing their tactics. But it was also to do with the fact that it was changing worldwide. For example, in the second Intifada, Palestinian Intifada in 2006, they picked up this art of stone pelting. Now, stone pelting was not there earlier. But they picked up this art of stone pelting from them. And in 2009, 10, 11, those are the years we saw a lot of stone pelting in Kashmir. But it was standalone stone pelting. It had nothing to do with terrorist operations. Then you see in 2015, when I became the Corps Commander, earlier I said they should cover their faces and wave black or green flags after Friday prayers in some mosques, and the police would fire tear gas shells to disperse the mobs. But their faces were covered. In 2015, Burhan Wani changed all that. He and 9 of his friends, 10 of them with AK rifles, they posted a photo on a Facebook page. Yeah. So they started, now they were inspired by the Arab Spring, the Arab Revolution, use of social media, creating content on social media. They made Burhan Wani as an icon, as an icon for the youth. Yeah. And media, social media, plus his actual movements around in villages in the interiors, and he became an icon. So much so that I know you recall in 2016 when I was the Corps Commander still, we eliminated Burhan Wani and the valley burnt for next 4 months. So that is the kind of thing he had grown into. So the militants, the terrorists also had changed their tactics. They used social media for mobilization, for radicalization, for of course creating those narratives and icons in any case I mentioned. So they started changing their tactics like this. And then after abrogation of Article 370 in 2019, we saw this shift towards the initial term of what white-collar terrorism initially started with hybrid terrorists. Yeah. The hybrid terrorists was now, they were not able to send terrorists for training to training camps. And they started recruiting some radicalized youths, to operate a pistol, to fire a pistol or throw a grenade. It doesn't require too much of a training. And you can get these lessons from movies, from internet. So the hybrid terrorists were those who were then asked to do only one act. Like we had that there was a terrorist who went and shot a chemist in a shop, or who shot an immigrant labor. He did that, and then he would throw his pistol away and merge back into society, into his home, into his community, so that his records wouldn't be created. He was a terrorist, yeah, but he has been just commissioned to do one job. Smartly, they would just do one odd. The moment you do multiple acts, then somebody will be able to catch on to you. All right, so that was hybrid terrorism. Now, this white collar terrorism, educated people. Now, when I said this, these are the trends world over. Osama bin Laden was an engineer. His number two, al-Zawahiri, was a surgeon by profession, by training. And in Indian context, when our Indian Mujahideen was there 10, 12, 13 years ago, in concert with Simi when they were operating, they were engineers in that. So, it's not a new trend, but now for the purposes or for the reasons of necessity is surfacing more. Because a doctor, in this case they were doctors, so a doctor has an air of respectability around him or her. When a person says, I'm a doctor, to even a police checkpost, they would be more lenient. So that is one angle that they are trying to use. And that is why we are seeing such radicalized people. Look at the video that Umar was speaking of, and how nonchalantly he was swiveling in his chair like this and speaking. So, on one hand, doctors would, such educated people would be, it would be easy for them to slip past the dragnets and try to prosecute terrorist attacks. It is good that we sort of managed to catch the security forces, intelligence agencies managed to catch them and avert a larger tragedy of 32 detonators. Yes, so that's on one hand. It would be easier for educated people to prosecute terrorism. On the other hand, Aditi, this, let's say this doctor, back home in his village, he's a hero. He's a hero because he's a doctor, isn't it? Yeah. All of them in their communities were heroes. And such people are icons. Boys want to emulate them. Girls want to emulate Shaheen. Because she's made something of herself from Pulwama, from Kulgam, from Anantnag, wherever, and they're doctors. So in their village, they have a lot of respect. They are icons. When they do such things, those youth who idolize them, those boys and girls are inspired to follow their footsteps. So they are radicalizing people automatically. So I think that is one aspect that we also need to bear in mind.
It sounds so difficult to manage because this is organic, right? This is not a terrorist saying, okay, I'm going to get you all into my training camp and sort of, coach you and teach you, and you go and do this and carry out this blast. This is just happening. This is scary. But you talked about 370. How has the life of a soldier undergone a change in Kashmir after 370?
Well, life of a soldier has changed because comparatively there is a lot of peace and quiet in the valley. In 2015-16, when I was a Corps Commander, or even till 17-18, we know that there were so many bans and hartals, stone pelting everywhere, violence on the streets, spilled on the streets ever so often. And there was so much of uncertainty. Schools would be closed, markets would be closed, tourism was suffering. And so the life of a soldier was very much, because a soldier would always be tense, would be on tenterhooks. So many times there would be operations. The infiltration was all-time high. Recruitment into terrorism was high. But after Article 370, there is comparative calm. There are no bans. There is no Hurriyat issuing calendar of bans. The schools are open. There is no virtually no incidents of stone pelting at all. Just an odd aberration to prove the exception to prove the rule. The rule being that there is no stone pelting. Not only the tourists are thronging because of all this, investment is coming in. For the first time in the valley, when you are seeing Domino's and Haldirams and the multiplex, there were no cinema. So all this is happening. The youngster, the youth is reaping the peace dividend, as I would feel. So it makes the life of a soldier also comparatively easier, and that's what's I'm coming to that, and that is why they had to do Pahalgam. The handlers across, they could not let the ISI. They decided they can't let it happen. That that feeling of normalcy that is setting in had to be removed. They wanted to instill fear in the minds, and that's what has happened. Now suddenly the tourists have gone away. When the tourist goes away, the tourists are not thronging anymore, and they're not thronging. It affects the common man, and that is why I have said often, and I'll say this now, what we, security forces and the government machinery, could not do in 4 decades, the terrorists did after Pahalgam attack. That whole of Kashmir, in a united voice, cutting across party lines, everyone condemned terrorist violence of Pahalgam.
Right, because
their rosy roti is being affected. So now it is affecting the common man, right? So that is the difference after Article 370.
I hope that going forward it becomes better again, and they inch towards normalcy. But let me just move on to asking you some very personal questions about your life as a soldier, sir. Do you remember the first time that you heard a bullet crack, or the first time you killed somebody or somebody very close to you passed on or was shot at?
Yeah, of course. When the first time you hear a bullet, if you heard a bullet and then obviously you are not dead, you're not hit by it. You heard a bullet. Right. So first time when I heard a bullet whiz past me very close, and I heard the snap, it was on the LOC, and I was a young officer. We were moving up to from one post to another, and the more experienced soldiers with me, they said, "Saab, down." But I was taken aback. It was just a couple of shots that were fired. But I did not go down, I was a little shocked, or not shocked.
How old were you?
Oh, I was about, I think 30s. And when it happened, I was very pleased with myself that I did not naturally feel afraid, scared. I was pleased with myself that, I did not go down to ground fearing this thing will happen. So I was very happy at my own lack of, not fear. No, everybody has fear. But my response was not, so scared that I just go to ground and not able to get up, shaken with fear. So I felt happy about that. Everyone has fear. You have to overcome your fear. Bravery is not absence of fear. Bravery is overcoming fear. Fear is a reaction. Right. Courage is a response. So,
and have you ever been shot in the line of duty?
I have a very interesting incident to tell on this. Have you ever been shot? I have been shot at. And okay, let me just narrate this again. That it is in my book, India's Brave Hearts. I talk about that. I was in a brigade headquarters for something, and there was in a village close to my battalion headquarters. There was an encounter broke out with terrorists because our battalion got the message that there are some terrorists there. We got some intelligence, and we moved. Our boys moved, and they informed me on the radio set, and I moved back from there with one officer and my QRT. Major Himanshu Sawant was with me, and we moved to that site. When I reached there, Captain Vinod, who was leading the encounter with our troops, and I could hear firing in the distance when we stopped at the roadhead. Now we had to climb up the mountain through the forested areas for about hour and a half. We would have to walk up. And he told me on the set, radio set, he said, the terrorists opened fire at us before we could establish a cordon.
Okay.
So that's a very messy situation. You normally want to establish a cordon before you start engaging with terrorists, because now they have the option of running away because our cordon is not in place. And he said, the direction that you are walking up from, there is nobody here. So please place one LMG, a light machine gun. Please place your people there. So that can act as any escaping terrorist can be taken care of. Now, I placed my light machine gun there. And when I reached that place at the roadhead from where we had to start walking up, there was a vehicle, a small truck, which was there at the place. They had brought ammunition replenishments. And the ammunition had to be taken up. But there was nobody. So somebody would come down to take ammunition replenishment for the soldiers who were engaged in the combat. And so I said, okay, because they needed rocket launchers. They said, rocket launchers hame chahiye. Rocket launchers were with them. They needed more 84mm rockets. So my soldiers were already stuffed with that. I used to sort of, I was free. I didn't have the heavy weaponry, like machine gun, grenades, and all that others were carrying. So I said, I will carry the 2 pods. I carried a pod each of 2 rockets. The pod has 2 rockets, 84mm rockets. And so I carried 2 pods. One is about 17, 18 kg. So this is 2 pods I'm carrying, and we are walking up. When he said, drop the light machine gun, Vinod told me, so we dropped the light machine gun. We deployed them at a suitable place. And then we were walking. Now, at this stage, we were only 3 of us. I was followed by Himanshu Sawant, Major Sawant, and behind him there was another Jawan. So as the 3 guys got dropped, light machine gun, we were on a thin track walking upward. So I was in lead. Now, Sawant, Himanshu, and the other soldier tried that they will come in front, sort of to protect the commanding officer. I said, no, I will walk in front. And I continued to walk in front. At a certain place, there was a wide nala, a dry nala. So I could not have jumped because I was carrying this load. I stretched my leg out and I put my leg on the other side. I got unbalanced for a moment. I was trying to regain my balance. And suddenly I heard Himanshu, Major Sawant, from behind me, said, hey. He said, hey. And I turned back. The moment I turned back, I was trying to regain my balance. I turned back and he started firing at me. I was so shocked. He is firing at me from just about less than 10 yards. I was transfixed, but actually what had happened is this, now unknown to me. I'm now narrating it to you. There was a terrorist who had run down, perhaps, and he was hiding in that nala.
So he was not shooting at you, he was shooting at that.
He raised his head, his rifle came between my legs. He saw his head, he says, I told me later, I saw his head and I saw his rifle coming up. And that is the time I tried to warn you. I said, hey. And there was no time. You turned back and I started firing. He hit him. So that the terrorist fired and Himanshu fired all at the same time. His bullets, I think I could smell something going in front of my nose. So, but I didn't get hit. God was kind. I actually jumped off. So we all had a laugh.
Had a laugh? I would have been crying and saying, thank God.
No, much later we had a laugh. And when I told Himanshu, यार मेरे को एक बहुत अच्छा लगा, मेरे को डर नहीं लगा. He said, sir, हमें तो बहुत डर लगा, because he was like, if I don't get him and I get you, that could happen. That could happen. So, but these anyway.
Interesting. So, we spoke about this earlier, but has there been any time that you've lost men in your battalion? And I have these set of questions that I wanted to ask you so that, we just get a perspective of a CO's life. And your battalion is like your family to you. Your people, your troops, your boys, as you call them. You send them out and probably endangering their life every single day. Have you lost anyone ever? I'm sure you have. How do you deal with that?
So, Aditi, it really weighs on your conscience. Even for the Uri attack, I always say that I lost those 18 boys on my watch, but there I was a corps commander, at least slightly removed. But in combat, when you are yourself in combat, as a commanding officer, as a company commander, you are in combat with your soldiers. During my commanding officer days, it was 3 years of being deployed on the LOC, and the times when I said that we used to have 3 or 4 encounters with terrorists. So that means 3 or 4 firefights in a month. And during that time, I have lost 8 soldiers, 2 officers and 6 soldiers. It is very tough to lose soldiers on your watch. And it is so tough. Like in an encounter, you are there yourself and you lose a soldier. You are, amongst other things, you are racked when you come back by something called, I learned this term later. Yeah, I learned this term later, but I suffered it before I learned this term. You come back saying, I mean, how did I come back alive when he didn't? And the worst thing thereafter is how to break the news to the family. You are coping with your grief yourself. You are coping with a tactical reverse and operational reverse. And now yet you have to get in the human dimension. You have to speak to the wife, the parents, whoever the next of kin is. And that, I think, no training in the world can prepare you for that bit.
Any moment that you recall where you wish you hadn't done or asked your men to do something that you ordered them to do?
I wouldn't put it this way, because it is an occupational hazard, and we all know, while it is very sad, it is very tragic when something like this happens, but we all know that it's an occupational hazard. So, for instance, when I lost an officer, the commanding officer himself has to break the news. Those days, there were no mobile phones. I remember we lost an officer on quite high up in the mountains. I had to drive down past my headquarters to Punch, to the town. It took me 1.5 hours of drive after the operation was over to reach a STD PCO booth. Now, today's youngsters may not understand what an STD PCO is. You and I know what we're talking about. You had to go to a phone booth to make a call to his family. And
Such news over the phone.
Of course, she says, hello, good evening, Colonel Dua. Now, she is as chirpy as ever. And you are going to, what do you say? Body kalaegi. How do you prepare yourself for that? And I remember like one case when later, oh, bhai, aapne unko kyun bheja? That voice stays with me. So no, I won't say I have regrets, but I can perfectly well understand how the wife or the mother or the parent feels.
Yes. I was going through your book. I know this is a very somber nerve that I've touched, but let's just move on. The untold stories of the Indian Army that you've spoken about. And in one of the chapters, you spoke about going through 3 full years in combat without a life jacket yourself. Again, some would call it foolhardy.
Yes.
Why did you choose to do that?
2 reasons. Firstly, I had read this book called A Bridge Too Far by Cornelius Ryan in my very impressionable years in the academy during training. And A Bridge Too Far is about Second World War, and I don't go into the story, but what I want to point out is there was a major, I forget his name, from South Africa. And in one of the battle situations, he would, those were the days, coming back to, he would carry an umbrella with him always. He just carried an umbrella, and he became known as Major with an umbrella. Those days, the allies were fighting with, different countries, contingents coming together, fight. Sometimes there were language issues, sometimes the password was not known. Some friend or foe issues were a lot, and there was fratricide and all, obviously. So he is always very. I've seen that movie. I remember in the movie. I've seen the movie also. In the movie, once there's a shelling, artillery shelling or air strafing starts off, and that's the time everyone jumps into the trenches. Uh, there's a padri who's hurrying across the street to get into shelter, and he runs up to the padri, opens the umbrella. He says, "Come, father, come under my umbrella." No, that's how umbrella doesn't offer any protection, but it's the chutzpah of it. So I was very impressed by that. And when the author interviewed him, he said, well, slowly it happened that patrols would not recognize each other. And in one situation, that umbrella saved our lives because when we were going, somebody else was about to open fire when someone later told us that, no, these are our troops because there's a major with umbrella in that. So anyway, that was a story that must have made some impression on my mind. But coming back to your question, when I became the commanding officer in 1998, our first encounter with terrorists took place after a couple of weeks. So we were my battalion is a Paramveer Chakra battalion. We have great records of this thing, bravery. We have many awards. We captured executed the highest attack in the world at Siachen Glacier. Paramveer Chakra, Bana Singh got Paramveer Chakra, and many. So we were very happy that we've got an operational moment 3 years here. And our first encounter, when we got the information, we went with great josh into the encounter. We killed all the 3 terrorists, but I lost an officer, Major Rohit Sharma. The morale of the battalion fell down. I myself felt so low. There was an air of gloom in the battalion. I could not sleep that night. And the next day, I got my soldiers together. I motivated them, saying how we must pay homage to such a hero by keeping his mission alive. I was trying to motivate them. This is what we did at Siachen Glacier 10 years before that. And we got great awards. We are going to do that again. And I was just trying to give a pep talk. We got an opportunity after a few days, I think another 10 days or 12 days, we had another encounter with terrorists. I just decided to not wear a bulletproof jacket, not wear a helmet. Not only is it stupid, I agree with you, it is against the orders, it is also stupid. So there is a very thin line between courage and foolhardiness. And now I look back and see, foolish as it may be, but I saw a very different energy in my soldiers, in my troops then on. And it stoked up a very positive spiral of bravery. Many officers have asked me, my company commanders asked me, why don't you do it? My Surda Major said, come on, sir, you must.
Does your wife know you did this?
Later down the line, she did come to me.
And what did she tell you?
Used to, those days, you're reckless when you're 40. And I remember saying, समय से पहले कुछ होगा नहीं, all those philosophical things, nothing will happen. And somehow, our battalion started doing well operationally, so well that we got that feeling into us, that little bit of reckless audacity came into all of us. I remember Kandahar, that hijacking took place in 99. And by that time, our battalion, our boys got up in the bus and said, Sir, Sanu bhej do, we will go. Hame bhej do, hum jayenge. That josh was very high. Yeah, so like I used the word, it stoked up a positive spiral of bravery. Earlier, I told you in an incident where I was stupid enough to, this happened in during Kargil war in 99 again. I was stupid enough to risk the lives of my Jawans by walking across when we told them, you will not fire at us, otherwise. No, like at that time I said, I was doing it for the intangible of the sentiment. Now, here it was, and everyone would say, they would feel, no, it is a wrong thing to do. I know that. But when your subordinates see the purpose, the intent behind it, when that shines through, I think they can see through you. And I have no other explanation, but it worked.
All right. Looking back, you won't do that again, I hope. Or you would. Who knows? Who knows? All right. I have a few questions which I want to go into a speed round where
Now I'm scared.
I wrote down some questions, the highs and lows of an army man. But before I get into that,
I must warn you, don't ask me anything. My wife will also see this.
what was the most dangerous moment for you at the LOC? Have you, unless you already shared it with us?
I think the dangerous moment was that when I had a very close shave when Himanshu fired. I had three such instances where, by right something should have hit me, but a bullet, a shrapnel should have happened. I don't want to get into the details. I've written one chapter in that book which you read that was close. I've written 4 such incidents, one of which I've told you. That was the riskiest moment.
The riskiest moment. What was the most satisfying moment?
Can I give 2 answers?
Sure.
So I will give you a type of moment, not one moment. I think the most satisfying moment, my first answer, most satisfying moment was when after an operation, and when I'm talking of operations, I'm only talking of counter-terrorism, encounter with terrorist kind of combat on the LOC or slightly in the hinterland. The most satisfying ones are those where we had those 6 or 8 bodies lying around, terrorists killed, and not a scratch on our own soldiers. And when you get together after that, that feeling of you don't do anything else. We just do a battalion ka jaikara, that we do, the battle cry of the battalion, because you are not on the line of control, you are slightly behind, and you, even if you're close by, you do that to give josh to yourself, let anyone hear it, all that kind of high of adrenaline. I think those are very satisfying moments, those operations. So not one of, there were several such happy ones because you don't have any casualties. The second answer is a more larger thing, more somber. After my tenure as a Corps Commander in Kashmir, I was on promotion. I came as Chief of Integrated Defence Staff to Delhi. And now, of course, there is a full-fledged CDS in place, Chief of Defence Staff. That time, there was no CDS. I was entrusted with the responsibility of steering the creation of the National War Memorial near India Gate.
Okay.
Having spent 4 decades in counterinsurgencies, I've been in counterterrorism, and now having been into combat at different levels, right up to the last, I signed off my operational thing with the Uri surgical strike. I got great satisfaction in steering the construction of the National War Memorial, right from the design selection to construction to completion. More than 26,000 names. Each name each name has a separate brick. The loss cannot be undone, but at least the nation has paid them befitting tribute to honor the
Absolutely, sir. I've been there, and it gives me goosebumps every time I visit. So yes,
That
definitely.
is a very satisfying moment.
All right. And now for the speed round that I was talking to you about. So you enrolled in the MBBS before
Yes.
getting your NDA call. How did that happen?
It was in Karnataka. Those days, it was purely on merit. I had to just fill in an application, which you are filling up everywhere. So I did apply for NDA. I did fill up for this. The process in NDA is a little longer because after the written test, you called for an SSB, which is a 4 days interview. After that, there is a physical medical, and then there is a merit list drawn. So it takes a couple of months for that process to take place. Whereas here, I got the call letter based on my marks, and I told my father, I don't want to go, I want to go to NDA. But not only my parents, my friends, my cousins, everyone said, you are a fool to pass it up. Logon ko milti nahi hai seat, you are getting a seat, and I was getting some scholarship on that. So after you're 16, 17 years old, I enrolled. I joined the medical college. I did the first semester. By the time I got the call, I had to join in January, and I joined.
Was it a difficult decision?
In my mind, no, not at all. But my my father is from Air Force. But still, since I had joined there, my parents tried to dissuade me.
कि एक सेमेस्टर का पैसा तो दे दिया है. Okay, okay.
So maybe whatever. So I think my strong desire prevailed, and they saw it in there.
When did you know that you wanted to go into the forces?
I've always been very fond of aeroplanes because I grew up in Air Force camps. My father was an airboardier. So I had this, when I looked at my father in uniform, I liked that. Then I joined the NCC in school and all. I had that bent of mind. But I think the tipping moment was, I was in my school, I was in the boarding in the Air Force Central School at Subroto Park. Now it's called the Air Force School. One day in our assembly, the morning assembly, two boys, alumni, who were in the National Defense Academy. They had joined the NDA. They had come during their term break, and two boys came and gave a talk about the National Defense Academy in our assembly.
Okay.
And I remember a lot of us got into a huddle after they went, and then we spoke amongst ourselves. And I think that time everybody wanted to join. I don't know how many of them, but a number of us decided. So for me, that was the day I somehow decided I am going to join the National Defense Academy.
All right. Now, this was the second time that I teased the speed round, but I'm really getting into the speed round because I wanted to hear your answers. So therefore, so for a civilian audience, what is the biggest myth about modern warfare?
I think today, not only civilian, we also very glibly say next war is not going to be kinetic, or it will be less of kinetics, more of high-tech war. There will be drones, there is robotics, so there is a standoff war and missiles, touch-button warfare, right? We talk about that. I think that's a myth, because however high-tech you may get, your system, your platform, your high-tech, everything is only as good as the soldier that mans that gun, the man who makes that projectile, the man who makes the system, whether it's the software or hardware. So I think it is the brain, the bravery of a soldier or the operator will always shine through.
The soldier's intuition, is it real?
I would bet on it. I have often used my intuition. I've given you a couple of examples where I just went by my hunch. I got lucky. Even this surgical strike, Uri raids, they were called surgical strikes. Later, I mean, if we were taking a leap of faith, let us say we had reverses. So, at many times during a small tactical operation or a larger operation like the Uri surgical strike, I think it's your hunch, it's your gut feeling, it's your intuition, all put into, and that comes, you're not taking a decision on those 2-3 minutes or 5 minutes, you are taking it on the basis of 4 decades of experience in combat.
So you would trust your gut over protocol?
An answer I would give is yes. I mean, it may depend on the situation, but I think so.
What does patriotism mean to you today?
2 words, nation first. I'll expand, just
Sure.
a bit.
Sure.
I think patriotism means not only going and fighting for the country, because everyone can't fight for the country. Soldiers can, but everyone can't. But it doesn't mean that anyone is less patriotic just because he's not in the army or armed forces. A cricketer brings laurel to the country, a sports person does. But also, you don't have to be famous to be patriotic. You just can be a good citizen. You contribute in every way. The way you can contribute is by doing whatever you do. Give it your best.
Right. If you had to capture your life in uniform in one battlefield image from your memory, which one would it be?
It would be a memory of a combat operation gone successful. And after that, when you meet your boys and we talk about it, it is successful. We had no casualties. And the war cry and that. And now I'll have to urge somebody to read in my first book, India's Brave Hearts, how I met the boys, officers who came back after the Uri surgical strike. And that's a story to be read.
No, but you have to tell it to us now that you've started it. I have, but you have to tell our viewers.
Well, it's been flogged so many times in media. When they came back and I had to, for the debrief, it happened somewhere around 2:30 or so. they were flown in by helicopters to my headquarters from different multiple location rates, and these officers were there. The commanding officer was there, and before they started the briefing, the man entered with a tray, but instead of teacups, he had a bottle of Black Label. I had asked for it, and I just said to them, I said, you boys have created history. Remember, we are on a high that we did not have a single casualty and we had a lot of successes. So I said, you boys have created history or something like that. History will remember you for it. And we've said, and actually we seem to have set a kind of going, bold actions across the border. But then I took the bottle, and with the bottle, I gave a swig. The bottle itself, I gave a swig to everyone in his mouth. And then one of the majors plucked up courage. Said, I want to give it to the crew. He gave it to me. And
Okay. All right. If a young cadet is listening to this and wants to serve, what's the one piece of truth you would like to tell that person? Not inspiration, sir. The one piece of truth.
Yes. I tell youngsters who join the army, commissioned into the army. So cadet is about to join the army at some time. And I would tell him, get it out of your mind that you are going to be commanding soldiers, a platoon, a company, and you will be the commander. Because that's what the impression they have. You are going to be serving your troops. Because you have to serve their best interests. You have to make sure that they stay trained enough to fight and save themselves. But you also have to make sure that their logistics is catered for, that their well-being is catered for. When it's peace, it's their welfare. When it's in war, it is their protection, self-protection. So I think you have to change that mindset is what I would tell the soldier. Because the officer, because I think that is what truly an officer-soldier bond is about.
Your message for the youth of India. I'm not talking about a cadet now, I'm talking about all youth.
I say this when I go to colleges, universities, and I say this to youth all the time, so I'll repeat it here with your permission. You don't have to join the army to serve the country. You can serve the country by doing what you do to the best of your ability. Because the growth story of India needs all the skill sets. And you can be a good citizen. If you have respect for a soldier, be a good citizen. It's tough to be a good citizen, to choose the harder right over the easier wrongs. But I would say to them, if you respect a soldier, you want to respect a soldier, be a good citizen. Be a citizen worth dying for.
That's a wonderful note. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for talking to us. Jai Hind.